Hi, welcome to Losing Faith, Finding Spirit. Today I want to talk about how narcissists, toxic people, and emotional abusers will do almost anything to keep you from getting your healing. And what I mean by that is if you're wanting to get therapy, if you're wanting to make yourself a better person, maybe you want to lose weight, maybe there's some things that you're trying to do for you, the abusers in your life, the toxic people in your life, will stand in your way. They will try to manipulate and control and gaslight and invalidate you so that you don't get your healing. Now, how does that happen? A couple examples from my own experience is that I really needed therapy. And I have a psychology degree and a sociology degree. And I knew very early on that I had some unresolved issues from childhood because of my alcoholic father and codependent mother. And I knew that I needed to do some deep dive healing to address those childhood issues. I did not realize at the time that I was in an abusive relationship and that I was trauma bonded. The language for narcissism and trauma bonding did not exist at that time. We're talking 20 years ago. What we know now about narcissism and toxic people, abusive people, are far more than what we had at that time. So even though I have a psychology degree and I went to classes and we did talk about narcissists and abusive people and emotional abuse, it was very minimal as far as discussions went. And it's not like I have higher levels of psychology behind me, so I didn't deep dive into those kinds of studies and learn about narcissism or any of that. And it would be many years after already being married when I would even realize what narcissism truly is. And it only after I had had a falling out with a friend who was a covert narcissist did I even know what narcissism was. And it was actually during my journey to self-heal, my mother wounds, that I learned about narcissistic mothers and how they treat their daughters. And that was really eye-opening. And that's when I started to realize what narcissism was and start to really kind of understand and keep an open mind to have one ear listening out for narcissism. But even then, I didn't put a narcissist label on my ex. I didn't even think that he was a narcissist. And a lot of it is because he was an alcoholic. And that alcoholism masked a lot of the narcissist tendencies and the other issues. I mean, because there's a chance that my ex has some other issues, disorders going on. Again, not a psychologist, not a therapist. I can't diagnose him, and not that he would ever allow anyone to diagnose him. So I can only talk about myself and my experience. But knowing labels helps me understand what happened and how to heal. And having the language helps me find the resources that I need and the tools that I need. And it helps me disengage and not take things so personal because I know that this is an inner issue that my ex has and there's nothing I can do to help. And extensive therapy is the only option, and I know he will never take that route. And I also know that even with extensive therapy, there is not enough information out there to really help narcissists. They have to really want to make themselves better. And they have to find healthier ways to get narcissistic supply. And I know that my ex has a lot going on. And again, this is the self-blame talking and me taking responsibility for his emotional well-being and his mental state. And that is not something that I am responsible for. So as much as I know so much, I spent so much time researching into what was wrong with him while neglecting what was wrong with me. When I said that I needed therapy, I said, I need therapy. I'm not well. He said, you don't need therapy. You're fine. You just need to just take some time and relax. You just need to not worry about this stuff. You need to just let it go. You need to move on. And sometimes he would say some things that seemed very insightful at the time. And I was like, oh, that's some good advice. Like, that sounds like something a therapist would say. And it was because he would often go to therapy. He would get to a point where he would need some therapy to kind of move forward. And he'd only go to maybe 2 or 3 sessions at a time, and then it would just quit. And it would just be just enough so that he'd feel better about himself, like that he did something. And in the pattern of our relationship, it was always just the bare minimum so that he could write it off as, I did it. So like, he wanted to get healthier and get exercise. He joined a gym, and he went to the gym for a couple weeks, every day for a couple weeks, had a trainer for a couple weeks. And then that was it. Never went back to the gym again. He wanted to take up running because it's free. You don't have to go to the gym. You can run. Ran for, I don't know, maybe 2 days. And that was it. I mean, and he bought like the expensive shoes, and he was like, got all the stuff ready for going to the gym and having a gym bag and all the stuff for the gym bag. And I mean, not for nothing, he used them. And the running shoes, you could wear day to day. But like the show, there was a big show of, I'm going to do this big, amazing thing. And then look, I did it. And then I quit. So that if you say, hey, what about you said you wanted to take care of your health? I did. I've got that gym membership. I can go back anytime. I know what to do now. I'm good. And that was the bare minimum. And even with the alcoholism, he would quit drinking just enough to say that he did it. And then he would go back to it. So when it comes to me, I wanted to get some therapy. So he would use some of that stuff that he learned in his sessions to tell me, like, give me some things to say, some pointers, which made him look good because now he's the one who's given me the therapy pointers, despite the fact that I have a psychology degree. And so that kind of would be a pattern. So he would go on a binge, like he'd be drunk or he'd just be on a rage, and he would just be yelling at me and call me crazy or call me whatever. And, and I'd be like, I know I'm crazy. That's why I've said I need to go to therapy. You don't need therapy. You're not crazy. I'm like, you just said that I'm crazy. And I'm agreeing with you. And it's like, one, him saying that never bothered me because I knew I had issues. So it was like he's trying to pull me into something with that, like, obviously trying to push me down and like argue at me and invalidate and make me feel small by calling me names. But it didn't work because I was like, I'm very self-aware. I know that I have issues. Here's the thing that's really, now looking back, that surprises me about myself is that I didn't just go. I could have just scheduled therapy and gone, but I couldn't because it was all through his insurance, and he had an EAP program, and I had to go through certain steps to get free therapy sessions. And he would become aware of it because it was all on his plan. So it's like I had to let him know so that I could just do this thing. And now I know that was a false belief. I didn't have to. I could have just gone to therapy. No different than any other doctor's appointment. Whether he liked it or not, whether he wanted me or not, it was within my right under his insurance to go and do this thing. But I couldn't because, again, I was in a financially abusive situation where every dollar that I spent, I had to justify. So if I wanted to spend $25 on a therapist, he'd see that. He saw everything that I did financially, unless I used my private account. And why would I use my private funds when this is something that is a health thing? It's a need that I should be able to use the joint funds for. So it's just, the situation was really messed up. And I see it now clearly. At the time, I didn't. And, but I wanted to get my healing. So then I was like, all right, I can't go to therapy, so I'm going to look up self-help books. So I spent a lot of money and time, and I had to spend my own money on the self-help books. He didn't want me to spend joint money on it. So that's the financial abuse happening. Like, if you want to make yourself better, you got to use your own money. You can't use the joint money, right? Because books are your hobby. Reading is your hobby. You have to use your allowance to spend on your hobby. And there was some occasions where, like, I wanted to buy a self-care, like, mystery box. I subscribed to a box, and he said I could use the joint funds for that. Well, it wasn't like therapy. It was just like little, like, little stuff, So like a face mask and like self-pampering stuff. But he was okay with me spending joint funds on that because it was superficial. And it made him look good because he could say that, if my skin looked better from using those treatments and stuff, then he could show me off. I was a trophy. So it's all comes back to his view and how whether or not therapy, whether or not anything was beneficial to him and made him look good. It always stems down to what your abusive person wants. And I'm going to put a warning on here, and I should probably just do a separate video on this, but couples therapy with a narcissist or an abusive person is dangerous. I'm just going to tell you, you need to be very careful if you're wanting to go into couples therapy. You need to have private sessions first. Absolutely have separate sessions. And I will tell you this too, he absolutely did not want me to have my own private session. And now I know a couple of the reasons that I know is because, one, if I get healthy, then I'm going to check out. If I get better, there's no reason for me to stay in an abusive relationship when I know I'm better than this. I deserve better than this. Two, I'll be too strong and he can't manipulate. He can't control. I'll get some confidence. Three, the one that he actually said, he didn't want me talking bad about him to anybody. He wanted to control the conversation about him. This was the biggest point, and I think that this is probably a really big one for narcissists. They are terrified of you telling the truth about them to other people. He absolutely hated gossiping, and he would say, if you've got something wrong with me, you come talk to me. Don't go telling your friends. And that was something that I truly believed in at the time, because I had seen other people in abusive relationships tell people and then keep going back to the abusive relationship. I mean, now I know a lot more about abusive relationships and trauma bonding, and now it all makes sense to me. I would totally interact with that person differently than I would have back then. I would have been much more patient with that person. And now I'm very forgiving. They're thankfully that friend is out of the relationship and has moved on and has done a lot of healing, and also, like me, knows a lot more about abusive relationships than anybody did back then. Granted, we know more. We didn't know as much back then. 20 years ago was not the same as today. The internet is totally different 20 years ago versus today. The information we can access is totally different. So, a lot more chances to get healing without therapy, but I knew I needed therapy. And he wanted to, every time I was like, I need therapy, he'd say, well, I'm the problem, so we're going to go to couples therapy. Every time. Like if I had and it's like, no, I have issues I want to work on by myself. I need to get myself under control. There's some things that I know that I need to do. No, I'm the problem. I'm going to therapy with you. I don't want you talking to nobody without me knowing what you're saying. And here's where it's dangerous. So because we did couples therapy the second time during the pandemic, so it was online via Zoom, and the therapist asked him to separate. Like, we didn't do separate sessions, which, and again, if you're going to do any kind of couples therapy, you have to start with separate sessions by yourself so that you can let that therapist know the full breadth of your situation without your partner hearing anything. They cannot. Don't let them hear what you say. They will be furious. And that's why couples therapy doesn't really work in a narcissistic relationship and emotionally abusive, because as soon as you start actually opening up about the abuse and about what's happening, they'll act prim and proper in front of the therapist. They'll cry, maybe they'll get emotional. They'll say that you don't understand them. They'll say that this is just a misunderstanding, or they'll say, I had no idea you felt that way. I'm going to do all of this stuff, and they'll make a grand show of it, and you'll feel really good in the session, but as soon as you leave, you're going to get it. You are going to get it. And if you're stuck in a car, you won't be able to escape. And they are going to rage at you and tell you, how dare you say those things to those people? What do you mean that they're this and that they did this and that? How dare you? And they'll cry at you and they'll argue at you and yell at you and scream at you. And if they're a violent person, they might get physical with you. I've heard of stories of people being literally abused, like physically violent against them after therapy. Because the narcissist, the abuser, has been felt shame and felt these big emotions that they can't regulate. So they have to abuse you to feel better about themselves. So therapy is actually very dangerous. I don't recommend you going to couples therapy with an abuser. I don't. And if they don't get abusive afterwards, which is rare, if it seems like it's going well, that's them just putting on the act. It's going to come out in other ways. They're not going to change. You really have to do separate therapy in order to make a difference. And that's really going to show whether or not your person is serious about getting healthy too. If they're serious about actually doing the work and becoming better, they're going to want to do their own therapy and work on their issues. Because honestly, if you both are working on your separate issues, the relationship is going to flourish. It's going to benefit from that one way or another, whether that's it ends and you move on with your life, or the other person also does some work and actually makes some changes, which is, again, very rare. So I don't recommend couples therapy at all. If you have any of those red flags we've talked about in the past, any hint of it being emotionally abusive, any hint of it being a narcissist, I do not recommend couples therapy at all. At all. Get your own therapy. You will benefit, the relationship will benefit if you're both in therapy separately. So that is my talk about therapy and self-help. And also because, like we started, they don't want you to get better. So when you go to couples therapy, they want to be in control. The whole reason why, if they want therapy, in my case, he didn't want me to go to my own therapy. He wanted to be couples therapy so he can control. So like I said, I was on Zoom and this therapist said he wanted to talk to me privately. So he asked my ex to go into a room, put on headphones, put on music, close the door, and give me some time. And so I've opened up in this few minutes. I already knew at this point that I was heading towards divorce. I already made up my mind. I just needed some time to work some things out. And I was still dealing with a lot of fear and trying to figure out how to make this happen. And I told the therapist that it was emotionally abusive. And I'm not sure what else I said, but I was trying to kind of, and there was only like five or 10 minutes left in the therapy session because my ex steamrolled and controlled the entire conversation. That's the other thing. They will control the conversation. They will make it about them. You're not going to get really anything out of couples therapy except for, abuse afterwards. So I opened up. I said he was emotionally abusive. I said the situation is beyond repair. I said I'm not okay and I don't know what to do. And of course, my ex was listening the whole time. He did not do what the therapist said. He was literally listening and eavesdropping. As soon as it was over and whatever, he let me have it for over an hour. I have a recording of him just cussing me out, yelling at me, banging on the wall, punching the wall, kicking the wall, won't let me leave the house because how dare I say he's emotionally abusive? I'm like, you're freaking doing emotional abuse right now. Right now. You won't let me leave. I've said I don't want to talk to you. Do you not understand how this works? Like, you are being emotionally abusive right now. And you violated my privacy. Absolutely. And I was done. I was checked out. My emotions towards him were completely dried up at that point. The privacy issue is a big trigger for me because my mother never gave me privacy as a child. So the fact that he eavesdropped during session showed me that there's no trust in the relationship and it's gone. It's done. And I literally my emotions towards him completely dried up in that moment. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to pretend anymore. I can't do this. And it took a little bit longer, not too much longer, actually, probably like a week or two before I was like, this is it. It's done. We're having a divorce. Let's do this thing. And they just try to control. It's all about control. They want to control you. They want to be in control of what you say about them. They want to be in control of whether or not you get better. And because if you get better and they're the ones that are helping you get better, then that makes them feel good. Because look how good this person is because of me. You did this success because of me. But if you get better without them, they can't handle that. So just be aware. Be careful. Get your therapy, get your healing however you can. And don't let them know. Just don't tell them. You don't have to tell them. You don't have to share everything. Put up a boundary. Your self-care and your self-healing is for you alone, and you don't have to share that experience or inform your partner what you're doing or that you're even doing it. You don't have to. You can keep that to yourself. I hope you find your healing. I hope you find your way, and I hope that this helps. Thank you for listening. Bye.